All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Well, it's been a while since we talked about the Zodiac Killer, so I thought we would do a new Zodiac upload. And this is one of the things that I've been meaning to make for a while. When we talk about the concept of the group murder theory, or that there were multiple people involved with the Zodiac killings, and they tried to pass it off as one person. And I mean, it could be as many as 37 murders, right? I mean, that is what is, a possibility. And when you look at some things like the murder of Sherry Joe Bates and how that is kind of accepted as a Zodiac killing by some, but not accepted as a Zodiac killing by others, you really begin to see there could be other murders that are pulled into the Zodiac web and the Zodiac sphere. But when we want to have a conversation about what is the likelihood that multiple people were involved with the Zodiac murders, like what really is the likelihood of that? We've explored a variety of examples of this on this channel. We talked about Arthur Lee Allen committing the murders, but having a partner write the letters and the ciphers, ensure that the murders were committed by one person, Arthur Lee Allen, and that the ciphers were composed by just a completely different person, that he had a partner. We've talked about the possibility that Richard Gaikowski committed the murder of Darlene Ferrin and shot Michael Mageau, but Gaikowski was not involved with the other murders. That Richard Gaikowski, he committed one murder out of the Zodiac murders, and then he passed that off as that of the Zodiac Killer. And there is a larger one out there where it's like they believe that there was no actual single Zodiac Killer. Somebody was kind of just trolling the police. They were listening in with a police scanner and reading the newspapers, and that you have this person who's sending in letters, who's sending in the ciphers, and then they're just kind of trying to pass off other people's murders and crimes as that of the Zodiac Killer, and this just turned into a case of mass hysteria. I mean, I think that that is very implausible. I would definitely say that I believe that this is kind of the work of, there's at least one central figure. I mean, I don't really think that this is just somebody with a police scanner listening into stuff. And we mentioned about, I believe after Darlene Ferrin was murdered, that the phone call from the Zodiac Killer came only 40 minutes after the crime had been committed. I think it's very unlikely that is one of the cases that's going on. And it's like, I've been tempted to really explore the possibility of some things. And you're going to have to bear with me now because this is a little theoretical. And if you just want to, like, some people might explode, other people might be like, what are you talking about, dude? We could look at kind of this from sort of just a theory. Sherry Joe Bates was murdered by Ross Sullivan. Darlene Ferrin was murdered by Richard Gaikowski. The remaining murders were committed by Lawrence Kane. It's a theory that I've been entertaining with, and this is something that I really wanted to write down because I've never read any sort of thing that's been approaching the Zodiac Killer in this way. And during this little podcast here, I'm going to talk about a variety of group theories, whereas I don't. I mean, the problem is the reason why I would be very hesitant to put that out there, or it's like to write it as an article and even put it up on someone else's website is. It would be playing a lot of devil's advocate, and I don't want that to be interpreted as, something that would pollute people's thinking as opposed... I mean, I'm very well aware it's a theoretical statement, but we've done a couple episodes on Ross Sullivan, and the overwhelming feeling on the internet is Ross Sullivan murdered Sherry Joe Bates, and I would at least go to the level of saying Ross Sullivan should be the prime suspect in the murder of Sherry Joe Bates, whereas a lot of people are sort of saying that they could accept Ross being the murderer in that particular case, but when it comes to the other incidents involving the Zodiac Killer, the other murders, they believe that those were committed by other people. The reason I brought up that theory, that Ross killed Sherry Joe Bates, Gaikowski killed Darlene, and the remaining murders were committed by Lawrence Kane, I mean, that would sort of be like Lawrence Kane being the lead perpetrator in that, the central figure. It would be that The Gaikowski Darlene connection in Albany, both of them being in Albany at the same time, and both of them having that connection to the same building. Gaikowski working in the same office building as Darlene's husband. Gaikowski becoming the prime suspect in the Zodiac Killer murders. Darlene Ferrin becoming a Zodiac victim. I don't believe that that is a connection that should be ignored. But at the same time, it's very possible that Gaikowski could have, you know, he could have committed that murder and passed it off as the Zodiac Killer. I don't think that that's too far beyond belief. And this might be a little bit of a stretch. But based on what we've read about Richard Gaikowski and his personality, I think he's the kind of person that would do something like that. The reason why is, I mean, he's a very creative type. He was a journalist. As far as we know, he intentionally got arrested as part of a journalistic project. When you see that Richard Gaikowski mugshot, I mean, what the sort of idea that they're expressing on the internet is that Richard Gaikowski, got himself arrested on purpose. It's not like he was a career criminal or something like that. We have many other career criminals in the Zodiac Killer theories, but Gaikowski apparently did that, as part of a project. He was like writing an article about it. And, also, I mean, after Gaikowski left his newspaper, The Good Times, he worked, in running a movie theater, and he was a very kind of creative, artsy person. And I think that maybe, the genius can turn to madness a little bit. I mean, that connection with Gaikowski and Darlene is something that I cannot ignore. But what do we do if someone was out of the country for the Lake Herman Road murders? Well, there's one thing that I would have said. I can provide one explanation about how Gaikowski could have done that. I know this is supposed to be the group murder theory upload, but it's like Gaikowski could have come home for Christmas. That's right. The Lake Herman Road murders, if I recall, they were, what was it, around December 20th or December 21st or something when Gaikowski was supposedly in Ireland? Well, what if he came home for Christmas, like for like Christmas vacation and then went back to Ireland? I mean, when I say Christmas vacation, I mean, of course, he was working as a journalist, and he published an article from Ireland that we can find on the internet very easily. I mean, we know that he was indeed there. And as I mentioned as well, other investigators apparently checked him out and saw his passport that he was indeed in Ireland, but would they have overlooked something like that? I'm not necessarily sure, but if we want to talk about the group murder theory, well, I mean, there's an enormous mountain of evidence against Ross Sullivan murdering Sherry Jo Bates. That's one thing. The Gaikowski-Darlene connection is something that I don't feel can be ignored. And Lawrence Kane, though. Lawrence Kane, why would he be the third person in this group murder theory? Well, the reason why I would say something like that is, first of all, we have the Kathleen John sighting identifying him as the particular murder. And not to mention, Harvey Hopkins has his whole theory about how he has cracked, that line in the cipher where it says Cain 1924, and that's actually something that is written from right to left. Like I believe that the message is actually written kind of what we would call backwards, but what Hopkins interpreted that to be is that he thought that the person was writing in the Hebrew style, that he was trying to say that he was Jewish. But I mean, many other languages write in different directions. Arabic also goes from right to left, so I mean, we couldn't really. Is he like trying to say that he's an Arab possibly as well? I'm not too sure about that. I don't even know if Lawrence Kane is Jewish or not. But one of the things about that was Lawrence Kane really fits the profile. I mean, he has a history of, kind of mental illness, and he would have been exposed to cryptology in the Navy, so says the online community. Not to mention, the Kathleen John sighting is another thing that points evidence toward him, and I really wish, though, that, I really wish we could just explore the possibilities a little bit more. I mean, I'm going to tell you some things. In the past, I was really leaning toward the possibility that Louie Myers was indeed the Zodiac Killer. He meets none of the physical descriptions of anything associated with the Zodiac, but I thought that he was the guy. I thought that his narrative fit more perfectly than anyone else, but I've completely kind of eliminated him from that group murder theory. I don't know how Louis Myers would be connected to any of these other people, and I'm not really seeing it right now. And what I would hope that we could do over the next couple weeks is explore some things about Lawrence Kane and Ross Sullivan. Really try and determine what is their role in this whole thing. What is their role with the Zodiac murders? How important are they? When I was watching the Lawrence Kane upload on YouTube, talking with the interview with Harvey Hopkins, and it's like what it really sounds like is the investigators just got either overwhelmed, bogged down, and the investigation of the Zodiac Killer turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. And Hopkins is saying just flat out no one would listen to him about Lawrence Kane. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of that going on because, even Earl Van Best, even in the book about Earl Van Best, it's like, I believe, what was that guy's relation to him? Was it even his son? I mean, I'm getting a little fuzzy on the details now, but, when they're trying to put stuff forward and get DNA, like, that stuff gets denied. And I believe when they tried to get a kind of DNA comparison between Richard Gaikowski's DNA and that of the Zodiac Killer, that was denied as well. So you really see that these things can erupt into a bureaucratic nightmare, and that could be the biggest reason why the Zodiac Killer case has never been solved. But it's like I just couldn't shake the fact about this connection between Gaikowski and Darlene, and well, then that would mean that, well, okay, if that's what happened, well, then who else would have been involved? Well, I would say that I said Lawrence Kane because I think he fits kind of the MO more so than anybody else. He's in the area, and the Zodiac ciphers are supposed to be kind of a clue to the identity of the killer, right? And that theory put forward by Hopkins about cracking the cipher was very, very kind of startling, and also it's like I really think that Lawrence Kane has been investigated a lot less than these other suspects, and once again though we're gonna approach these things with an open mind, and we're going to kind of try and learn a little bit more about what's going on. When we want to talk about group murder theories with the Zodiac Killer, is there any possibility that we're actually dealing with like 5 different people or something, and these people are plotting and planning together? I think that that's going to be somewhat unlikely. It really seems like the police seem certain that a lot of the letters and ciphers are coming mostly from one person. However, though, for those who entertain, the Ross Sullivan theory, we have Ross Sullivan dying in 1977, and there's a Zodiac letter mailed in 1978. That, for those who entertain that, I mean, if they actually do think Ross Sullivan is the Zodiac Killer, that means people are messing with the police, if that is the case. But I'd say there's one thing about Ross Sullivan. It's like he really fits a lot of the. I mean, I said the MO in the past. I mean, I just think Ross Sullivan comes across as a very likely suspect. Not only is but the problem is though, Lawrence Kane is almost the same thing. It's almost the same points. Both of them had backgrounds in mental illness. Both of them had suspicious behavior. I believe Lawrence Kane had a bigger criminal record than Ross Sullivan, and but at the same time, I mean, I think both of them match the physical descriptions of the Zodiac Killer very closely. They seem like very similar suspects, and Louie Myers is almost in the same boat with them, except for the fact that he doesn't match any of the physical descriptions at all. He is too short. He doesn't have the widow's peak. He has completely different hair. I mean, like, especially when you see any photos of Louie Myers when he's kind of like turning profile, it's like he has a very long nose, and it's like I'm not really completely certain that he might have had a lot to do with this. But once again, we're going to approach things with an open mind. You can always learn something new that can change your perspective about some of these things. I mean, is it possible that Kane and Sullivan were kind of just both murderers. I mean, like Ross Sullivan murdering Sherry Joe Bates and Lawrence Kane committing all of the Zodiac murders except Darlene Ferrin. It's possible. What do people make of Richard Gaikowski committing the murder of the taxi cab driver Paul Stein? I don't think that that exactly fits the Gaikowski narrative and theory, and I mean, I don't really feel that the explanations provided for that were that strong. Whereas, with Louie Myers, they were at least saying he killed the guy for drug money. Lawrence Kane, I think, would be a much more likely suspect in the murder of somebody like Paul Stein, but I could, I want to know more about Lawrence Kane, and I wish they had more sort of things about him on YouTube. And when I do a search about Lawrence Kane or Larry Kane, not a lot seems to come up, but Ken Narlow, the investigator, was actually featured in that little clip that I mentioned after the interview with Harvey Hopkins. They had Ken Narlow in there, and he is apparently one of the people who has kind of seen Richard Gaikowski's passport. I believe he's one of the investigators that saw Gaikowski's passport, determined that he was out of the country during the murder for the Lake Herman Road murders. But he seems like he is somewhat open to the possibility of Lawrence Kane being the Zodiac Killer. Now, there's one thing that I do confess is that when Hopkins was giving the explanation about that, it seems like he is talking about how the name could be actually written C-A-N-E instead of K-A-N-E. And I'm like, wait a second. What do you mean? I mean, like, he's like, it could be a C or a K for the name Kane. Like, he's certain that it's spelling Kane. It's just, I was like, well, I mean, Lawrence Kane, it seems very clearly that he's always writing his name with a K. Is that too much of a stretch or something like that? I don't know, but I just wanted to throw that out there that I don't think that the Lawrence Kane theory is completely fitting like a glove. But what I would say is, based on the descriptions of some of his personality that you've read about online, and that definitely that 1924, like that's his birth date, and if they did find the letters K-A-N-E, if that is indeed what that little message is trying to spell out, that's some pretty damning evidence. I mean, so one of the reasons why, is this one of the reasons why this case has not gone solved so easily? Was there the possibility that, Richard Gaikowski committed one of the murders and tried to pass it off as the Zodiac Killer? I mean, if there isn't a Zodiac connection between Gaikowski and Darlene Ferrin, I'll eat my hat, but I would just be like mind blown. I mean, it's just the Albany connection is something that I don't think we should ignore, and we should take that very seriously. But at the same time, it's like if someone's out of the country, they're out of the country. Well, if they only committed one murder, well, who did it? And I would propose that I would find Lawrence Kane most likely to be taking that place now. So just a little recap. If there is any sort of group theory going on, Ross Sullivan murdered Sherry Joe Bates. Lawrence Kane committed all the murders except Darlene, and Richard Gaikowski killed Darlene Ferrin. This is one of the reasons why I'd be very hesitant to kind of, explore something like that. I mean, I think there's even a book in that. Like, you could write a book-long essay on that theory that we've put out there. The problem is, though, it's kind of like playing some devil's advocate. I told you, this is very, very theoretical. I'm not putting that out there like this is, what I would spend my last dying breath saying. It's like I would put something like that out there because I think there's a possibility that it could be true. And I don't know, just that would be a theory that I would really like to explore. I mean, I just want to know a little bit more about Ross Sullivan, and from what people have left in the comment sections, they have some great info out there about Ross Sullivan and lots of personal details, as well as some of the other material that is going to come out with Lawrence Kane in the future. We can keep digging through some of the blogosphere material, not so reliable, but there's lots of it, as well as like what people have to say. And kind of like, what I like to do really is to compare these two ideas. Do these ideas make sense? And what I think that we can really examine is the possibility that there could be multiple assailants involved with this. There could be multiple perpetrators. But I think that we should probably get away from the possibility of there is a gang that was planning this, or that this was the work of, some people just trolling the police and creating this fiction. Like, you read a newspaper article and then you write a letter to the police, or that you're listening in with a scanner and writing the letter to the police and making phone calls pretending to be taking credit for some other crime that someone else committed. I mean, well, if that were the case, where did we get the idea of the Zodiac hood and the Zodiac, symbol seen at the crime? It's like, not to mention the physical descriptions of people, it all seems to kind of add up, but it's like, I mean, like, I really wish we could explore that more. The theory that Ross Sullivan is the prime suspect in Sherry Joe Bates, Gaikowski murdered Darlene Ferrin and shot Michael Mego, and then Lawrence Kane committed the remainder of the crimes. What do people think about that? And not to mention that not only the murders, but also the attempted abduction of Kathleen Johns. So, what do we really have to say? It's a far out theory. I really am saying that it's something far out, but I just kind of would like to I would like to eliminate some of the things that have been going around online about that this was the work of a gang, or this was the work of just somebody taking credit for other people's crimes, and explore this possibility of a group murder where it's like three people who are kind of like lone actors. They aren't connected in any way. They didn't plot together to do this. No, there's just like three people that did something like this. Ross Sullivan, Richard Gaikowski, and Lawrence Kane. Please push some holes in my theory if you have anything to say at all. Challenge me. Tell me where I'm wrong. I want to hear it. Let's talk later.